Hello again, this is Chipen Phung bringing you another edition of Spotlight Nagaland. I have a very critical question to ask today. Is Naga culture disappearing? Are foreign cultures slowly wiping out our cultures? From our dialects to traditional activities, from food habits to looks, we seem to have adopted new trends, and some of the trends are worrisome. To deliberate on this issue, I have panelists from different walks of life joining me on the show today. Say hello to my guest, Mr. Yan Boteng Azung, Professor of Sociology and Social Worker. Also joining us is Dr. Abenik Phung, a physician and also a politician. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you so much indeed for joining me on this show today. I will open this discussion with a question to Mr. Yan Boteng Azung. So, Mr. Yan Boteng Azung, Nagas have always been known as fierce warriors, a community that loves its culture and tradition. In fact, we are considered to be deeply connected to our roots. But there is an undeniable paradigm shift in our culture nowadays. We have generously embraced foreign cultures. From our lifestyles to thinking patterns, there is a massive shift. Do you think we are losing our culture and identity at an alarming pace? Mr. Azung, what is your take on this?
Thank you so much for the time. And I feel it very apt that the discussion on such a very critical question is being discussed today. I believe that such a question, such a discussion should have a very prolonged, should have more time actually. Just to cut it short, culture is something that is ongoing, and in the wake of the various factors such as westernization, modernization, urbanization, the changes in economic systems, the global media, you name forth. The list goes on and on. These are some of the factors that have an eye on the Naga culture. And then, yes, if I have to say it in a nutshell, that with regard to the culture, Naga culture, it has shifted certain basic functionality, and then we can also see some major paradigm shift in the context that we see today. Once upon a time, the Naga culture as such was something of very organic in nature. But as we see in today's reality, we always see a blend of the West and that of our own local cultures. If we go on, if I have to put on duet, I think in order to have a talk on so-called Naga culture and its transition, I would rather put it that way. We have to understand certain basic things, basic concepts like that of acculturation, transculturation, cultural invasion, the loose cultures, and so forth. The Naga culture as such, we are experiencing all such processes. And I believe that in due process, we are also experiencing so-called the invasion that which the Nagas cannot really do away with. So maybe in the further course of this discussion, if time permits, we will have a talk on that also. Yes,
right,
please.
Right, Mr. Azung. Now, adding to what you have said, I have one more question to add there. Now, if we look at the trends that have invaded the Naga society, in the early 80s and the early 90s, the rock and roll era, and then came the punk and the emo era, and now it's the East Asian culture. Especially the K-pop and the Japanese anime culture. Now, this is influencing very strong. Now, why do you think? Because the cultures that invaded in the late 2000s, in the early 2000s or the late 90s, they were not so strong as compared to the new culture, the Korean pop culture that is invading the Naga society now. Now, what do you think could be the factor that makes this K-pop these East Asian countries, culture of these East Asian countries, even more dominant than the culture of the past?
You see, we have come across many ages, many stages. If we go by the history of the Nagas, in terms of culture, we have seen a lot of transitional stages. Yes, you have rightly stated as the imminence of the gay pop and the emo culture that have invaded us. The reason is quite obvious. We have technology like never before. It's a global village now. What happens there, you can see at your own screen. So the concept of a dominant culture, at the same time the concept of a popular culture, which have been popularized through different social medias, as I've said, a global media, just to put it that way. So if you don't follow what is happening now, you are counted as outdated, and the fear of being excluded from the team, the group, that makes us elusive that we have to be somehow a part of the team. So whether we like it or not, the acceptance of others' cultures in our own cultural practices have become an intrinsic part now. Those were the days when technological factors were quite not prominent like the way that we have now. But as I've said, the easily accessibilities of those materials, those contents that have really intrigue us, and then we tend to be more, we tend to perceive ourselves as, if we act like them, we feel a sense of superiority or being in the context of the life that we live. So this kind of thinking, this kind of lifestyle have really become a part of us, and this is seen as a trend. And if we fail to be in the trend, we are left out.
That's right. That's right, Mr. Yan. I will be coming back to you again to throw more points towards you on this issue, but I'll go to Dr. Abini Fung now. Dr. Abini, Nagamese has become the new cool among the Nagas. Now, many youngsters and parents prefer communicating in Nagamese even within the four walls of their homes, I should say. In fact, I know many people who have completely lost touch with their native dialects because of the use of Nagamese within their, in their homes and among their peers. Now, how is Nagamese destroying the cultural fabric of Naga society, in particular the dialects that we have? Dr. Abini.
Hi, thank you for having me on the platform. Yes, I am not a scholar as such, but yes, we do have actually, every individual should have this kind of concern, and I would be speaking purely based on my observation and on my own perception. So yes, your question regarding the Nagamese dialect that may disrupt our culture, I believe that I don't see much in a place that are more dominant in their own mother tongue. As in, I come from a district, Wokha district. I grew up in Wokha district, and to this day, even after relocating, we don't have the habit of speaking amongst us in Nagamese. But I also feel that people who have been brought up in mixed tribal communities, they tend to converse, or they're used to and they're habituated to speaking in Nagamese, because then that's the normal language or dialect that we use to communicate amongst each other. So how does that impact or disrupt the cultural, or in the sense of language barrier? I think that the role should be based mostly through the family. I think that amongst the family, if the parents at a younger age encourages to ensure that within the family itself, it is speak, or the mandate that they should be speaking in their own mother tongue, that would actually help them even as they grow up, and even as they go out and have mixed cultural situation, they will be able to retain that language as well. So it has to do more of educating or sensitizing the families, the parents in general. That I think that should be the basic approach to solving this issue, if there is.
Right, Dr. Abini, I agree with you on that, but now another question I have for you here. Now, Nagas, let's talk about Nagas 60 years ago and Nagas now. of the present times, we do not look the same at all. From our looks to our dress and food habits, we have changed drastically. You know, many youngsters take pride when compared to those from East Asian countries like the Koreans or the Japanese. In fact, East Asian cultures are making tremendous waves among youngsters in the Naga society now. So the question is, are our youngsters facing identity crisis? And how is it impacting their individuality and society at large? Dr. Rabini.
Yes, identity crisis. Identity crisis is not is I think everyone goes through a phase like that, and it has no specific phase of age. It affects everyone at a certain point of time. And now you at this at the on the point of your question, I think that 60 years ago and now, I think we can. The gap is quite drastic. The transition is tremendous, and that's because of the internet and the social media and everything that once it has entered. I think there's a lot of gap already, and this transition is happening now, and we are learning to cope with the transition. Yes, so definitely it will affect identity crisis. It will cause a lot of identity crisis issues. And I would also want to use my example. I also want to use the social media platform, all SNS's platform, how it impacts your identity crisis. Definitely, it will affect your mental health, and you will start comparing, you will start sort of seeking outside validation based on the likes, the followings, the comments, and popularity, based on those influencers and all those. There's lots of factors that will definitely impact your identity. You will start comparing yourself, especially because now the K-pop and all those cultures are more dominant at this point. We do see a lot of people feeling validated if they look more like them. They feel a sense of achievement or a sense of, what do we call it? You feel validated if you are compared to a certain celebrity or an influencer from those geographical location. So yes, so in order to, how do we get back to the reality? I think it's just to be being very true to yourself, and also asking around people who also have faced, or a senior or a teacher who could help you relate with the situation. That could help solve situations like that. But definitely it impacts our identity, because that being the dominant culture, that is the K-pop culture that is invading us. I think that I'm sure, and because I could be also one of them that was affected, because you tend to get influenced, you may directly or indirectly, because then it can also bring a sense of validation.
I agree with you when you say that. Yes.
That is what I also believe. And like I said, being open and being true to yourself, and also open about these issues. And you don't have to feel, also learning the fact that beyond all those situations, everyone has their insecurities, everyone has their own sort of demons that they're fighting. If that is being sensitized to all, and is being encouraged, and also encouraged to people allowing yourself as an opportunity to share what you're going through, I think that could also bring a positive impact, and also help in the situation. Because I don't see any time, or I don't see any solution where we can stop this. It has taken over, and it's going to go forth, and even greater things that we couldn't even imagine. So yes, now we should focus on how to deal with the situation, and that I believe is being true to yourself.
Yes.
And being open.
So basically,
about
Dr. Rabini, basically what you are saying is learning to balance the new cultures that are being introduced into our society and the existing ones that we have. I think that's basically what you're saying. Well, Dr. Rabini and Mr. Yanbo, we will go for a very quick break. We'll take a very quick break, but it's going to be very short and brief, so please stay tuned. Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying on. Now I'm going directly to Mr. Yan Boizung here. New generation of Naga youths have lost touch with our traditional activities. Not at all. I am not saying everyone, not all, but overwhelming majority, I want to say, overwhelming majority have lost touch. They cannot sing traditional songs or dances. They cannot even weave baskets, cannot even sharpen their machetes or daws, just to put it in simple ways. Women do not know how to weave clothes or knit or make traditional jewelries and all, among other things. Now, what are your thoughts? This is these things that we take very lightly, I feel, threaten our cultural, and our traditional activities, which, if we don't take care of, might get lost or disappeared, in a few years from now. Mr. Yan Boizung, what are your thoughts?
For a long time, I have a conviction with this statement: our culture, our identity. When we lose our culture, that means we lose our own identity, and then the identity crisis starts, and so many things follows. You see, when we are too much involved with the cultures of outside or outsiders' culture, we tend to be assimilated into theirs, and then our originality gets lost. So what happens is that there will be an erosion of social cohesion, because what happens is when we are too much encouraged with outsiders, the culture of the so-called the outsiders, there will be a weakening of our own traditional values, our cultural beliefs, practices, which binds people together. So at the same time, it will also occur in the loss of our own social systems, because there are some built-in systems of our inner culture which makes us sustain as a group, standing for each other. At the same time, if we look at, there is a danger, in fact. There is a danger lurking by the way that we are following, or we are trending now. This scares me, because the more we are not concerned about the culture, our own culture, there will also be a so-called the disconnection from history. There will be an historical amnesia. The cultures that we have are the memories and lessons of the previous generations. And once we don't take care of our own culture, once we don't appreciate, once we don't promote, once we don't celebrate our own culture, all of those laws will happen. We have talked briefly on the linguistic aspects. Yes, it's part of life. It's just an element of our social life. So everything will be diluted. We will not have what we once called it as ours. There will always be a hybrid, but a hybrid of not something that is very conducive for the whole society, but a hybrid out of which we tend to assume which works best for us, and doing away with the collective conscience or collective lifestyle. So this is one thing that is really intrigues me. And at the same time, there is another effect known as the cultural displacement, or the cultural homelessness. Once, if we just continue with what we are now, if the youngsters, at the same time the old ones, the so-called the cultural experts, don't take care of this, then we will come across a stage where we will be culturally homeless, and we will become an easy, or rather marginalized section of the people in our own ground. So there is quite a vulnerability of assimilation, and there will also be a lot of economic disadvantage, and there will be lots of cultural diversities.
That's right.
This will bring forth to what is known as global monoculture, and where our existence as a cultural entity will be lessened.
That's right, Mr. Yan Boizung. Now, I think not many people are taking this trend, this situation that we are experiencing at present times seriously, but this is high time for us to really put our thoughts and our mind into it, and to really see the impacts, the future impacts, and what it can cause to degenerate denigrate or degrade our culture. So I think it's high time. Now, Dr. Abini, some people argue that we are advancing along with the rest of the world and seeing the trends, adopting and practicing foreign culture or foreign activities, I should say, is getting normalized. We prefer to work with smart gadgets, smartphones and all of these laptops or the iPads, whatever, and internet over physical activities. Now, the traditional activities are becoming a thing of the past. Is it okay to replace our traditional activities with modern activities just because times are changing? Dr. Abini, what are your thoughts?
Are we actually advancing? I don't know. But yes, based on the specification that you have mentioned, yes, we have to adapt to the change. And we cannot be living in the past where we had no, the past as in prior to all this modernization. Also, yes, there is a thing between westernization and modernization, and one should not confuse with these two, although all of these two are required in order to bring that change or that advancements. So yes, we have what I would want to, my idea or my perspective towards this change is that we should learn to adapt to this. And while there's a westernization happening, modernization is altogether a different thing, and that's modernization is more important. And while keeping intact your cultural identity, while you have retention of those who you are, what your cultural, what your background, all these things keeping in retention, and then including or adapting to the new changes that we see in our day-to-day life today. I think that will bring a balance. And I want to use I don't know much of an I've not been to Japan, but I do know why Japan is very popular and why it's a top destination for any tourist, is because they have learned to balance their cultural as well as the modernization. That's where I would also want to encourage everyone. And we as an upcoming, we are in a transition period. We're a bit in the confused state still. And while in this situation, I think if we could encourage and also teach each other to learn to balance these two situations, I think we would also become maybe like the next Japan or something.
I agree with you. Now, Dr. Yanbo, sorry, I beg your pardon, Mr. Yanbo Isung, for 30 seconds, what can be done to promote and preserve this culture and take it forward?
One from the individual and one from the societal level, but just to mix it up to save time, in order to preserve, promote, and preserve our culture, there are a lot of things. Let's just brief it out this way. We should continue to practice. We should continue to actively take part in any cultural activities. Also, at the same time, we should also try to transfer the knowledge to the future generations through the parents, teachers, cultural leaders, through educators. At the same time, there is also a need of documenting and archiving culture, because you see, oral culture is something which can be misinterpreted, and then at the end of the day, we get the skin. And then,
yes.
Yeah. And at the same time, there is also a need of advocacy and education. Practicing cultural adaptation, as we have said, it is about balancing both the tradition and the modernization. So at the same time, there can be a lot of legislations promoting cultural practices, policies, supporting cultural institutions, promoting cultural educations, and so forth. If we do this, I think we can somehow save our local cultures.
You're right. I wish I had more time, but unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. So, well, gentlemen, lady, that brings us to the end of today's edition of Spotlight Nagaland. I thank my panelists, Dr. Abini Phung and Mr. Yanbo Isung, for joining me today. Northeast Life wishes you both the best. And I would like to wrap up my show with a quote from Marcus Garvey. A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. From the studios of Northeast Live in Guwahati, this is Chipen Krung on Spotlight Nagaland. Thank you for watching.